Today we'll start the new lesson of the kingdom of Kush. If you remember from yesterday, we said that Egypt or the Egyptian Empire declined when Kush seized power. Okay, Libyans conquered the area of Egypt, and then Kush took control from the Libyans. So we need to know who are the Kush. Now, before we start who are the Kush, we're going to talk about the area where the Kush came from. This is north of Egypt. Remember, north goes to the down and south goes up. So this is north of Egypt. Kush is there, okay? It was an area near Persia. And if you remember, Persia was the Babylonian and Mesopotamian and Assyrian empires. This is where Thebes was. So during that time, the Egyptian empire was not only the part of Egypt, but it was all the areas that were highlighted in black. Okay? It took a lot of parts up until Ethiopia, and it took parts to the Mediterranean Sea up until what today is Persia. When the Egyptian empire declined, okay, this area, the northern area, was taken by the Assyrians, which are the homeland people, and this area was taken by the Kush people. Okay, so near this area was an area called Nubia. It was separate from the Egyptian empire. Okay, later on, the whole area joined up as one place, and it was known as Kush. So the Kush civilization is originally what we call the Nubian civilization. Kush was located south of Egypt along the Nile River in present day Sudan. So Kush and Nubia were actually, Nubia was near and Kush was present day Sudan. Who were the first people to settle in Kush? They were the cattle herders. They arrived at this region and they started developing farming communities along the Nile River. The Nubians did not care or rely about the flooding of the Nile like the Egyptians because they received rainfall all year long. The weather was different at Kush, at Nubia. It rained all year, so in the flooding seasons, they would just take care that the floods would not destroy the farms and houses. But in the seasons of unfloodings, it wasn't called dry seasons because they had rain, so it was different. I have no idea why is it messed up. The rise of the Nubians gradually took over smaller villages around them, around the area. Who's in the waiting room? And they formed a kingdom of Kerma. So this is how the development of the Nubian Empire up until to the Kush happened. First, they were called the Nubians, and then they started taking over smaller villages around the area of Nubia, and they called it the Kingdom of Kerma, the whole place. Kerma's location was next to the Nile River, closer to the Nile River than the area of the Nubians, so it made it an important trade link between Egypt and southern Africa. Remember at the time of Hatshepsut when we said that she started trading? One of the places that she traded with was Nubia. She actually traded with South Africa, but she had to pass through Nubia first. So Nubia was an important link between Egypt and southern Africa. Now, the workers in Kerma, which is the bigger empire than the Nubia, worked in to build tombs for the kings, just like the Egyptians. They copied the idea and the habit from the pharaohs, but they built it on a smaller scale. The pyramids were smaller, the tombs were smaller, and they were not for all pharaohs. They were only for important kings. The kings were buried with their personal belongings. Egyptians, because we have the rise and fall of the empires, Egyptians invaded Kerma in the 1400s. And after a 50-year war, they conquered the kingdom back again. And Nubia and Kerma was now part of Egypt again, and it was part of the Egyptian empire. Okay, so this is the new Egyptian empire. Okay, the red one, and the dark brown or light brown coffee like color is the Kush empire. So when the Egyptians invaded Kerma again, or the Kush empire, they only took the red part, which is up until Nubia, and there was an area left in the south which they could not conquer. Do you have any questions concerning today's part?
I think
No, sh-
Okay. Don't forget to add the events on the timeline, please. Previously, the last timeline, you reached the New Kingdom, and from the New Kingdom, you had to put the rulers of the New Kingdom. First, we took Hatshepsut, and then we took uh, Amen, no, first was Ahmus. He was the first one in the New Kingdom, and then Hatshepsut, and then Amenhotep, and then King Tut, and then Ramses II. Okay, so this is what you're supposed to have up until the previous session. Okay, and this is all titled as the New Kingdom. After Ramses II, you should draw an X on the timeline. Let me show you. How do I get an empty image on? I think it's a new share. Oh, here it is. Can you see this?
yes.
Okay, this is our timeline. Now you have two options. Either you make a timeline for the Old Kingdom, a timeline for the Middle Kingdom, a timeline for the New Kingdom. So you have three different timelines, or you make one big timeline and then you start, for example, with here and you write, for example, the Old Kingdom and you continue the events, and at the end, you will draw an X or a dash or whatever, and then start writing here, this is the Middle Kingdom, and then another X, and then this is the New Kingdom. Once you finish the New Kingdom, the last point in your timeline of the New Kingdom should be the decline of the Egyptian Empire. Do you understand? So at the end, after you write Ramses II, there should be a dash or an X, and the last thing that you write on the timeline should be the decline of the Egyptian Empire. Do you understand?
yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
And then you need to draw another timeline, which is today's session. And then on this timeline, which continues after the decline of the Egyptian Empire, you should start by writing here with, for example, a dash that this is the Nubian Empire, okay, or the rise of Nubia. And then the second event would be conquering nearby areas and calling them Kerma, okay? And then the third dash would be the rise of the new Egyptian empire and conquering most of the Kush land. Clear? So today you have three dashes only to write, which is the continuation of the Egyptian empire, but we will include the new people, which are the Nubians and Kush. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yes, miss.
Okay. Please note that you have to, يعني by the end of next week, which is before the quiz, I will check the timeline because this will help you in studying. So by next Tuesday, this timeline will be ready. Okay? Do you have any other questions?
No.
No, miss.
Okay. See you tomorrow. Thank you.